So this is episode 12 of Life on Life's Terms. We have Ken back in this week. We're going to talk about just shit, I think. Just stuff.
Good shit.
Yeah, like positive and positive stuff that's going on in the world today, right? Or the things that are happening in our worlds today that's positive. I appreciate everybody who listened to the last episodes, and I'll bet you 10 to 1 that the people who listened to Chris yesterday really enjoyed that. I do have to plug this. I would love it if you went to our Patreon account and became a Patreon or a patron to Life on Life's Terms. A one-time commitment of $30 will get you a t-shirt that says Life on Life's Terms right on the front of it. And a $5 commitment per week will entitle you to early shows. So if you give us $5 a week, basically you don't have to wait till Thursday and Friday for our episodes and think about what we talked about all weekend. You'll get them on the days that we actually record, because this is pre-recorded. However, we do no editing. You can also see us at, or reach us or listen to us at iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitches, and YouTube. YouTube is Justin Roberts' Life on Life's Terms. And everything else is Life on Life's Terms. So, Ken, how's the day going?
Oh, it's going really good today. I finished up school and I booked it here as fast as I could to share a little bit. I thought we were talking about our tactics for recovery and healthy living.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
We'll go everywhere.
All right.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Today's a freebie. So, recovery, if we want to go there.
Let's start there.
Yeah, why not? So when did you start working a program of sobriety?
When I was last incarcerated, which was like 2 years and like 2 months ago. About 2 years, 3 months. And I started just like soaking up whatever knowledge I could, reading as many self-development books as I could get my hands on, applying myself to the exercises in the books. Also, I was going to self-development program, whatever ones that were available while I was incarcerated. And I started, I did the 12 steps. I did the 12 steps before, but then I started like chairing the meetings as well. Just because I was like really serious about it and I had a lot of good stories to share.
Service work.
Yeah, giving back as much as I could.
Yeah.
So there's like lots of different tools and techniques that I applied over the last couple of years, and that I continue to have certain positive rituals. Like from the second I wake up, whether it's like telling myself that, today's going to be a good day. I love myself. I'm going to love myself with my choices and my actions.
Yeah.
And then I get up and I make my bed.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. I make that motherfucker crisp.
You know, it's funny. If you listen to Jordan Peterson, okay, he has this analogy about making your bed. Yet, if you go into any treatment center or any halfway house, the biggest requirement they have you to do is make your bed. They don't give a shit what else you do, but your bed has to be made every morning. And if you look at a lot of what Jordan Peterson has said in his 12 steps to be a man, or whatever that book is called, I can't remember off the top of my head. He's basically inciting the 12 steps into normal people's lives. You know what I mean? That's basically what he's doing. And the analogy of making your bed, I used to say this in my early recovery. I would say, I fear the day that I forget to make my bed, because I think everything's just going to fucking fall apart. The ball of yarn that I have created is just going to unravel, right? That hasn't happened yet. I have forgot to make my bed and took off to work maybe a handful of times over 4 years. But it's one of those things, it's almost like a bank. As long as you're banking that bitch and you make sure that you have to do it every day, and the one off that you do miss, you come home and you're like, oh fuck, I didn't make my bed, but it was still a pretty okay day, right?
I won't. And like, I won't miss it. Even if I'm late already. So I'm making my bed. And like, it even had an effect on my relationship, because she really thought I was screwed up. Like, how serious I was about making the bed.
So let me ask you, in active addiction, did you ever make your bed?
No, never.
What bed, right? The mat?
Yeah, what the like I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't need a bed.
The bed was just for show.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's there, but it might as well be a fucking hayloft, right? Like there's no purpose to it, really.
No, it was a vehicle. I just stayed in the vehicle 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Got out to shower and change and went back in the vehicle again.
Yeah. These are the borders that I feel safe. As long as I'm moving, we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So outside of making your bed, what else do you do in the morning to prepare yourself?
Well, I don't eat in the mornings, but I like to go to the gym.
Do you do the intermittent fasting?
Yes.
Fucking A, that's what I'm on. I've been doing that too for the last little while. Yeah.
I noticed that like as soon as I, like sometimes on the weekends, if I have my kids and I'm cooking them breakfast, then I'll sit down and eat with them. Mm-hmm. But I always notice like after I eat, I feel like a sack of shit and like I get lethargic and lazy. But I find that if I just like hold off eating till around in between like 11 and 2 p.m., like in there, and then like I stop eating around like 8-9 o'clock, but then just that area, it allows me to just digest my food, and then I have like extra energy in the morning. And as soon as I eat something, my body has to start using up its energy to start digesting, and then I start dozing or get lazy. And
so one of the people that I've been checking out is this doctor named Rhonda Patrick. Rhonda Patrick she's a doctor, but she's a doctor of like biochemistry in the body. Okay. And she's really, really about how to be the best healthy biochemically, gut and the whole bit about your body. And one of the things that she says is that intermittent fasting will make your cardio better. It will allow your muscles to produce more creatine and your muscles will become stronger. So one of the things that she's saying is we should be fasting anywhere from 10 to 14 hours. And our exposure time to eating should only be at like 6 to 8 hours. So one of the things that she was saying that they can see is if you fast and let's say first thing in the morning you wake up and you decide to go for a run, your muscles will respond quicker because it's in a mode to start hunting. Okay, you're an animal as a human. Okay, so as you're running, because you're hungry or you feel hungry in the beginning of it, you will perform better. Your body will burn more fat. It'll decide to take that lipotin from your fat cells, bring it to your brain and say, yeah, we're getting energy. And it's going to start burning that sugar, right?
Our fat's like the purest form of energy that we got.
Yeah.
When you start burning that. From what I heard though, to like get in like the ketogenic state when you start burning that fat or whatever, I thought it was like 18 hours, but I don't know. Like I'm no scientist. I'm just kind of winging it. And what feels good, what feels right, I just do that.
From what I read from Rhonda Patrick, what she was saying is everybody's different.
Yeah.
So if you're like, for myself, I'm a heavier guy and I am on this new path to getting my health in check. I feel it at about 14 hours of fasting. So I will stop eating generally every night at 8 and I don't start eating till about 11, 12 o'clock the next day. But I will get my workout in before that, whether it be calisthenics, cardio, whatever it is that I'm doing. And I found a huge difference. Like my weight loss has been 68 pounds in 2 months.
Wow.
So, and it's been, and then the other thing is that I found out, and everybody's got to play with their diet, but I found out that I cannot have any carbs. I'm a Frenchman, man. My whole life has been bread and pasta, like French and Italian. There's no way around it. And so now I've cut carbs out as much as I possibly can. I eat anything vegetable and anything meat.
Yeah.
For a long time, one of my dietitians told me that I should cut meat out because my gut biome was not breaking down meat.
Oh, don't even get me started on the digestive system. Have you ever heard of colon hydrotherapy?
No.
Oh, you want to get into
Yeah.
Okay, colon hydrotherapy initiated my path to enlightenment like 5-6 years ago. So like I'm not an enlightened person. but I am on a path towards it. Like that's something that I strive for every day, is to learn new things and like about myself and the world and the universe and everything. So I was very close with this certain individual right when I was in like super active addiction, and I just spent like a year straight doing like copious amounts of cocaine, GHB, and drinking.
Sounds fun.
And meth. And don't forget crystal meth. So like everything like fell apart on me, like whatever shenanigan I was up to make money illegitimately started to fall apart. And then I was like, yeah, screw this. Like, I'm done. I need to straighten out my life. And so I like called my mom. I'm like, Mom, come get me. I need to sleep on your couch for a couple weeks and straighten out.
Yeah.
So she did. God bless her. And I was like 12 days sober, and like I straight up slept for 12 days straight. And then I was talking to an old friend from high school, and she ended up, she was like a yoga instructor, prenatal yoga instructor, a holistic nutritionalist, and a colon hydrotherapist. And when she told me that, I was like, a colon hydro-what-apist? She's like, a hydrotherapist. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And she says, it's like the healthiest thing you can do. It's like a shower for your insides. And I'm like, tell me more. She's like, okay, well, my dad did it, and he was an alcoholic for like 40 years. He drank an 18 case of beer every single day, no matter what. And then after he did it, he didn't have intentions to quit drinking.
What's her name?
Her name is Ivy.
What's her company?
Rehue Colonics.
Oh yeah, you basically gave her a shout out now. You want to go further? Any website or anything like that?
Well, right now her company is based out of I think Tennessee. She's in.
Okay.
Oh no, wait, no. Yeah, I don't know, somewhere in southern states.
Okay.
That's where she moved in the like last 3 years. She moved out there. Anyways, so, and she actually does podcasting too about like gut health and about enlightenment and spirituality and stuff. She's a pretty cool chick. So this was a long time ago, and after she told me about her dad, like detoxing his body and then quitting drinking, I was like, okay, like I'll try anything twice usually.
Yeah.
So let's do it. So like it was reasonably inexpensive considering like the health benefits. So it was like $80 an hour session, and you do hour sessions. So like the first session I went, it was like, okay, so you're gonna stick something up my ass? I'm like, well, are you gonna do it or do I have to do it? And she's like, well, whatever you want. I was like, okay, you do it. Let's have some fun here. And then so I let her do it. It's just a small thing. It's like the size of your thumb.
Yeah.
And it's got a two-way or a one-way valve on it, and it pumps water into your colon at 0.5 psi, and it fills you up. And they don't like exceed like 18 psi because they don't want to have any ruptures, because then you'll die.
Yeah.
But she didn't like tell me at first really what's going on in the colon. Like it was a big shocker for me. But so the first time I went, I filled up with water like really quick, and it was uncomfortable, and I was a big bitch about it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. And then I went and sat on the toilet after, and I like pushed out all this water, and like I was embarrassed, and I was like courtesy flushing, and like I sat on the toilet in her like business, and it I don't know. I thought it was a terrible experience, but she had me convinced, like, you have to go 2 days in a row at least, because the first day is kind of like when you go to the car wash, it's a pre-soak. And to get all the mucoid plaque, like the built up, pressed, decompressed shit on the walls of your colon off, you got to go at least twice. And I'm like, okay, I'll go twice, right? And so it's like, but that night, like after like shitting out all this water, and I should have looked at what came out of me, but I was too ashamed by the smell and the noises I was making in front of this pretty girl, like in the next room, that I didn't look. But that night when I went home, like I was like craving sugar, and that could have been like coming off drugs. But when I ended up taking a dump and I looked in the toilet, I seen this like ribbon in my poo, and it was like a big poo, and there was like this ribbon throughout it, and it was like the width of like two McDonald's French fries stacked on top of each other, and it was skinny, and I was like, what the fuck is that? So I took a picture of my shit and I sent it to her. And she's like, yo, that's a tapeworm. And I was like, no. She's like, yeah, that's a tapeworm, buddy. And I'm like, fuck you, it is. She's like, whoa, why are you swearing at me? I was like, because I'm ashamed. That's disgusting. She's like, listen, it's not uncommon. Make sure you come in tomorrow and we'll work on it. And I was like, okay, I'll be there with bells on. So the next day I went in. And
so the tapeworm sold you to really make sure that you're going to be there.
Holy fuck, man. You got tapeworms, buddy. You're going to go get them cleaned out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet.
So I'm sitting there and like, so the colon hydrotherapy machine, like there's this tube that goes in your butt and it comes out to the machine. And then like when you fill up with water, it just kind of like releases and then it brings whatever with it through this tube. But then it goes like through the machine and the machine's like plumbed into the sewer. But before it leaves and goes into the sewer, there's like lights behind this clear tube so you can see what comes out of you. Right?
Oh my God.
So, and you can like slow it down or speed it up. So you can like almost like slow it down to slow motion. And I counted 30 plus living organism creatures, tapeworms, pinworms, all these different types of bacterial worms come out of me. And like, I'm like, that's really fucked up. She's like, well, you got to think though too, from like a physical standpoint, that like we're a living organism full of billions and trillions of other living organisms. And almost everybody has a big sack of worms where their small intestine drops into their large intestine. It's like they dub it in that industry, they dub it the pit of worms. And I was like, after she's telling me all this shit, I was like traumed right out. So I went 10 times, got like completely cleaned out. But what started to happen as I noticed as I was going to these colonoscopies, or it's not even a colonoscopy, it's colon hydrotherapy. But as I started going to these like treatments, my cognitive abilities started to improve. I started to have more concentration. I started to be able to decipher what I was thinking about, and I could start to control it. Like I could stop a thought. I can feel like where the thought was coming from, like what emotion was driving the thought. And I was like, you know, I think I can start to work with myself now instead of just being a victim to my circumstance. So that was like a big part of me starting to change my life around. And like, you know, every part of my life was a wreck. You know, like my relationships were like habitually disastrous, sometimes abusive, like from both parties, full of substance abuse, cheating. Like it was terrible, every aspect of it. My family was suffering. We were always fighting and arguing. My financial situation was shit. Either I had money from doing like some big drug dealer or some illegitimate score, or I was broke, struggling and looking for the next job I could do. Like every single area of my life was struggling. And then once I gained some confidence in my ability to control my thoughts, things started to come together. And like, let me tell you, it took fucking years, and it took a lot more fuck ups for me to get the ball like really rolling in a positive manner and get some momentum behind me. Like it took years still, like that was 5-6 years ago at least. And so now, like after having detox, now I go like twice a year just to like clean my whatever's in there out. But like that first time I detoxed, then afterwards when you get cleaned out, you got to start replacing probiotics and stuff like that because you get rid of everything, right? But like I highly suggest anybody at any point in their lives check out colon hydrotherapy. Check it out. It changed my life.
Sounds pretty fantastic. I mean, if you can go through it, it's
not that bad.
I applaud you.
It's not that bad.
I don't know if I know many. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it all depends on how your willingness, right? If there's anything that I can attribute to any kind of change is this. And the question always boils down to how willing are you? Because if there's anything that I've learned, if there's anything that I've learned, it's this. Either you can be a victim of your own circumstances, as you had suggested, and I think addicts and alcoholics play that card because they really don't know when they were victimized. And then I also think that normal people, they would rather just stay in the status quo. And then there are those who rise above. And I think addicts, for the most part, because we're that all in, all out personality, no middle of the road for us. We are already in that club of highly potential and active people. Because once we get our mind to something, there's nothing really, we have that fuck you attitude, and we just don't stop. So even in my recovery, my first 3 years, as I was getting fatter and fatter and fatter throughout my recovery, I just kept saying to myself, well, easy does it. Easy does it. I'll get to my health and all this stuff. But then what I had also realized was that just a little while ago, I finally got on the scale, saw my weight, and I was like, holy shit, man, I'm really that big. I couldn't believe that I had gained as much weight as I had gained. And I started realizing and Jeff had said this. So anybody who's listened to that podcast episode with Jeff, he was saying that he was always working out for other people. And now finally he's 6'8", 350 pounds. And he's back to what he was when he was playing, what was it, offensive tackle? Yeah, he played offensive tackle pro ball. And he was also a pro wrestler. And he said, now I'm working out for me because I just want to be healthy. When I used to work out as a fighter, that's all I ever did. So I remember when I was fighting, we would get up in the morning, do a 10-mile run. From a 10-mile run, we would go back to the gym, and then we would run jiu-jitsu or we would run Muay Thai. And then from there, we would then jump in the pool and do aqua aerobics till you were fucking puking. Then after aqua aerobics, we would hop into the sauna and you would just want to die, right? Because you had no hydration left in your body. And then it was time to go to work, like your 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So then you'd go do that. And then after your 9-to-5er, you go back to the gym, train with the kids or whoever for an hour. You do and put in your time. And then after that, you would train with whoever was going into the next tournament. So it was you and whoever doing MMA. And then the whole ritual the next day, plus adding in the calisthenics and all of the things that we would do in order to get those little muscle and grip strength, right?
Yeah.
In order to do in order to fight the way that we were fighting. If I compare that to what I do today, it's not even in the same ballpark, but I feel way happier with what I'm doing today.
We've got to have balance.
Well, and that's us. Like, we as addicts are all in and all out. And when we finally come to realize, shit, I can do things just for me. It's for me. I'm not trying to appease anybody, because you actually found self-esteem as opposed to ego.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge turn.
Yeah.
Because when we're running ego, we have to take inventory of what we've done in order to feel that pride. But when we have self-esteem, it doesn't matter what I did yesterday. Tomorrow may never come. Am I going to achieve my goals today? And by onsetting those right from the forefront, then your thinking pathology actually starts to change. And I think, what was it called?
Colon hydrotherapy.
If that can give you that significant mental shift, that's fantastic. And I also think that if you can decide to like yourself a little bit, what we have to recognize is that for the majority of our life, we've been calling ourselves a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Or if we haven't been calling ourselves a pile of shit, what we've been saying is, yeah, I'd really love it to work out, but well, if we're saying that, really, we've already self-sabotaged.
Yeah.
If we instead live in a place where we're thinking positively and pragmatically at the same time, then the reality is we're not living on cloud 9, but we're able to touch cloud 9 all of the time. And if you can achieve that, now you're not all in, but you have the motivation to go all the way through. And I think if you can achieve that, and it takes a long time, but some of the things that we have to do is put those challenges in front of us. So if this colon thing is something that scares the shit out of you, I would honestly suggest that if you're going to be uncomfortable, go and do it.
Well, from what I was told, and like, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but like the majority of fatal diseases start in the colon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, think that's a sewer system to our city, right? And if you have a sewer in a city that doesn't work, that city is going to be riddled with disease, you know? Another thing too, like from a a substance abuse standpoint, the two places in our body that will hold on to toxins is our liver and our colon.
Yeah.
So you got to think, like, there's actual physical remnants from the drugs and alcohol in our body even years after sobriety.
Yeah.
Because they're buried under layers of shit in our colon that the shit stuck to the walls in the colon. So if you have it, like us being one like organism, like everything's connected, and if we have toxins in our colon and our liver, like i.e. drugs, say like cocaine for example, the drugs that are still in your colon and your liver are going to send a neurotoxin to your brain that will cause a craving. But if you physically remove those, you get rid of the physical cravings of the drugs, and then the only thing you kind of really have to deal with is the memory of it. But
yeah, and even in that, like yesterday when we were talking to Chris, one of the things that we definitely know, and this is through Dr. Gabor Mate for sure, is those implicit memories that are deep seated into our memory is exactly what it is. The likelihood of you changing that thinking pathology takes rigorous work. And the biggest deal, and I know this from doing step 5, so for those who are normal people, this is what a step 5 is. It's basically confessing everything that you've ever done to another person. And the other person's going to give you feedback. But if there's anything that I've learned in a step 5, as a facilitator, what we have to do is we need to recognize, or help the person that's with us recognize what they're responsible for and what they're not responsible for. And I would say 10 out of 10 times, somebody is holding the water for some sort of traumatic event that's happened in their life, and it becomes a self-loathing thing. So when we're talking about the neurology of the brain, that thinking pathology in itself is what's firing and misfiring into the love feeling. This is why when you're talking to people, whether they be addict or normal person, and they say, well, I love myself, but they do not attribute actions of love towards others, that's because they really don't love themselves. They don't know what love is.
One of my favorite sayings right now that keeps me going every day is, I love myself with my actions.
Yeah. And that's why I was that's why I was suggesting that we have to put those challenges in front of ourselves. Because if we don't put those challenges in front of ourselves, we have to show ourselves time and time again through reinforcement that we do love ourselves. Because the reality is we've been going through life for a long time suggesting to ourselves that we're assholes, pieces of shit. I mean, you can tell anybody who they are in the first 5 minutes of meeting them. You meet them, they say, I'm a real fucking prick. Well, guess what? They're not lying to you. You just don't want to believe it. But the reality is they're not lying to you. They're a fucking prick. And there's no two ways about it. They just told you. You meet a woman and she says, I can be a real bitch. Guess what? She's probably a real bitch. She's telling you what she is, because that's what people who are unhealthy emotionally, that's what they do. And the only way to reinforce, I believe, emotional health is by reinforcing your physical health, your spiritual health, by humbling yourself, however you may do that. And then the emotional will fall through. And once the emotional falls into place, then you can go be of service in order for all of these things to be exacting for you. I have suggested to many of my sponsees, go hold the fucking door open at Safeway for hours, because you need to prove to yourself today that you're not an asshole. You woke up already thinking that you are.
Yeah.
Go prove that you're not now, right?
Yeah. And that was a big part, like right at the beginning. It's like, how do I prove to myself that I do love myself, that I am a good person? Because if I just go based off my past, then I'll hate myself forever. But if I start like today with my actions and loving myself and others with my actions, then I'm a good person today. And my past doesn't matter as long as tomorrow I pick up where I left off tonight when I go to bed, and love myself and others with my actions again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then I can change and control like where my destiny is going, opposed to like what I was doing and where I was heading. So
it's one of these ideas too, where you have to take care of your island for the water around you to be clean and clear, right? And that's what it boils down to. We as humans, because we're so fucking codependent, and I'd like to pop into this a little bit as well, we're so codependent that we want to become the white knight, jump on our horse and fucking save everybody around us. But the second that we as men or women make that action, the reason why we're doing that is because we're actually codependent. We're trying to play the hero so that this other person can recognize us saying, this fucking guy saved me. Oh yeah, because that's great. And then the next thing that happens is we hold inventory. We get pissed off at the girl or the guy 2-3 months later, and we go, I fucking saved you. Remember? I fucking saved you at that. That's because we're codependent. The reality is you have to be alone for a certain amount of time in order to recognize how much you're worth. And once you can recognize how much you're worth and you respect that, and you go from I like myself to I love myself to I unconditionally love myself, then you can actually attribute unconditional love to your children, to your significant other, to everybody else in your life. And this is a process that's sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. It all depends on how much work you want to put into it, right?
Yeah.
And the second that we fall, and I would strongly encourage anybody who's listening, get yourself a mentor and tell them, the second that I start taking inventory on the bullshit that I've done in order to perpetuate good feelings for myself, call me out on that, because that's not self-esteem. That's your ego and your pride getting involved. And I think if you can find somebody who is honest enough to do that for you, next thing that you know, you're going to become a better person. It's like they say, successful people hang around successful people because they don't want to talk about the bullshit that drags them down. There's no point to that, sitting in a pity pot. And I agree in the same context with emotional stability. I almost wish that normal people could see what we as recovering or recovered addicts, what we have within our fellowship. You know what I mean? I wish they could see that, because I think they need support groups as well. I mean, I don't think they're firing on all fucking cylinders either. I mean, look at the state of our society, right? That's a product of you as an individual. We're all contributing to that in some fashion, some way. And so if you want to change the world around you, you have to take care of your island. And if you're not taking care of your island, I mean, why is my marriage going sideways? Well, are you taking care of your masculinity? Are you taking care of who you are as a man? Are you doing what you need to do in order to recognize that you are who you are inside? And you're not being codependent. You have independent emotions, feelings, spirituality, the whole bit. Because if you're not doing that, your relationship's in a world of hurt. It's not 50% and 50% for a relationship. It's 100% on both sides in order to make a relationship. Mm-hmm. If it's 50 and 50, that spells codependency. Mm-hmm. And codependency is not a relationship. That's one person compensating for the other throughout their entire journey or in their entire relationship. And that's bound to break, you know? I mean, you could read a book from Melody Beattie saying, I think it's
Choices.
Codependent No More.
Oh, yeah, Codependency No More. I have it at home, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh my God, you got to read that.
Yeah?
Yeah, because as soon as you open it, you're like, when I opened it and I was reading that book, the first thing in my head was like, oh fuck, I'm some fucking pansy, right? Like that's what the reason why I started thinking that was because it was like, wow, am I ever fucking codependent? How many times did I play the hero card?
I think that's why I haven't read it yet, because I've been scared to. I know that codependency has like contributed hugely to like unhealthy lifestyle habits and choices and addictions in the past. But like, I wouldn't like to say I'm codependent anymore, but I got to read that book because I probably still am.
Well, one of the things that we do, and I would suggest this even for normal people. So one of the things that we do is we get sponsees, which is basically, when you're a sponsor, you're basically a mentor or a tormentor, however people want to look at that as. But what we do is we basically call our sponsees out on their bullshit. Now, one of the things that's going to teach you is how not to be codependent, because you have a set line and a boundary within that relationship. And now all of a sudden when you do that, I mean, most people don't realize that normal, and I don't even think normal people recognize that they're doing this. When they meet and sit down, they have a reciprocal conversation in what they can provide each other. Like, I can do this. And then the other person says, oh, I can do this. Most people, like most not normal people, don't do that. They just say, well, I'll do it all. And then the other person says, well, I'll do it all. And then next thing you know, you have two people trying to do everything as opposed to feeding off of each other. or suggesting things, right? And so we as sponsors, our job with sponsees is to learn what a normal relationship is. So like one of the things or the exercises that I do with any of my sponsees, first time they meet me, is I ask them to write down their expectations of a relationship and then of themselves, and then their expectations of me. We go through that, and that becomes our contract. And if any one of us breach any side of it, we're fired from the relationship. And that's okay. We can come back and look at it and rehash it, but we know the anchor of our relationship. And we don't go past these lines like, you're not sleeping at my house if you relapse. That's a big one, right? Or don't call me because your wife kicked you out because you've relapsed. We're not going there. And the only thing that my hard line is if you show me that you're not willing, we're done. That's what it boils down to. If you're not willing, there's nothing I can do for you. And if you decide that it's on your time, not the program's time, we're done. I can't go past that. The program is set up not to be at your pace. It's set up to be done rapidly so you can move on with your life. And if we're not moving in that rapid pace, in my opinion, all that's going to happen is paralysis with analysis. We're going to
Do you find that people become codependent on the 12-step program?
Okay, so this is what I've seen. There are people in 12-step programs that they like to live in that microcosm. What I have come to understand in my 4.5 years is this. I need normal people in my life because they're normal fucking people. And if I continuously live in the world of recovery with addicts, what ends up happening is I don't grow past that.
Yeah.
I will suggest this, though. There are people in recovery who can teach me a hell of a lot of things because they're in a normal field of life. And there's a very small group of us. But we're the ones. I mean, in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it said that your recovery will know no bounds. You will be able to go anywhere and you will recoil from alcohol or drugs like oil from water. That's what it said. Can I go to a bar today and perform my guitar? 100% I can, without a problem. Can I go to a backyard barbecue with normal people who are drinking beer, sitting at a barbecue, smoking a joint? Yeah. And am I going to relapse? Nope. Why? Because I'm in check.
Yeah.
I still have to go to meetings. I don't go to them as often as I did in my early recovery. But the thing that we have to recognize about the society of the fellowship is this. It's the only society where if you lie to somebody, you can go up to them the next day and say, you know what, Ken, I'm so sorry that I lied to you. I hope we can continue this relationship. I didn't even realize I had lied. And I'm going to try my best not to do it again. And the likelihood of another addict saying, yeah, that's okay, is highly likely. Try that with a normal person. They're looking to fucking erase your name out of their phone because you're a fuck up, right? I mean...
Yeah. We're a little bit more understanding because we've lived it.
That's right. So we have to take the fellowship for what it is and recognize that that's only a jumping platform into the sea of the world, so to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always going to come back to that core group of people, but you need to come back to that core group of people saying, look, I just joined the Oddfellows group, or I just joined the Lions, or I just joined the Rotary Club, or I just did this, because that's we as
social creatures.
Yeah, that's where you meet normal people. You don't meet them in the bar. You don't meet them at your friend's barbecue. You meet them in those contexts, right? And I think with millennials, what we're starting to see is we're losing that. Now, I mean, a fucking podcast is a huge deal because we're actually having a conversation. Because people nowadays don't meet face to face and experience this time, right? This is why we do this, right? Because millennials and Generation Z are lost. They don't have interpersonal skills anymore.
Yeah, they're losing them, that's for sure. Unless they're like in the workplace and they're forced to sit face to face and have conversations with people. But even then, everything's going screen time.
And it's remote. Everybody's working remotely from home.
Yeah,
I mean,
FaceTime, screen
I know
time.
for my business, the only thing for my business that I will actually have a building for is to provide housing. But outside of that, my office is my fucking laptop wherever I may be. Like, if I don't have to be chained to an office, I'm not going to be. But if you're not chained to an office, go and hang out in the cafe, not in your bedroom.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's 100% essential to have a healthy social group of people to interact with. And I see that with AA and NA and other 12-step groups. And like I no longer go to AA or NA, and I haven't for like 18 months. But that's not to say that I don't still have a group or a self-development program that I attend on the regular. And that's what I use the Peak program for. And that's basically just something that can be used alternative to AA and NA, or to complement AA and NA. It doesn't like substitute it, and like you can use both. And what it is just it's a local program that was created here, that was originally created in the Edmonton Remand Center. I talked a little bit about it on the last podcast we did. We just work on different life skills and core beliefs, and work on self-esteem. And there's certain exercises to do that, some cognitive behavioral therapy and neuro-linguistic programming. And but we simplify it down, and then we kind of tie in a little bit of the woo-woo and the metaphysical stuff and the law of attractions to like kind of pull your life together and manifest like the life that you really want to have.
Yeah, and that I can relate to that, because I'll throw this out there. In one of our steps, it says that we meditate, right?
Yeah.
People think that we're talking about meditation with your creator. Okay, well, we kind of are. It says that. But the reality, if you really listen to what Bill and Bob were saying in the 12 by 12, they were suggesting that you and your creator walk through the life that you want. They weren't saying for you to have this sit down like you and I are having today, talking to your creator. That's not what they were suggesting. What they were suggesting is, take your creator and let's go sit in your new office. Take your creator, let's go and sit in the park that's just outside of your brand new house or condo or whatever it may be that you're aspiring to live in. Yeah. Let's go and do those things.
Because take your creator. That's inside you, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's like your soul, your spirit, like something that's not exactly outside of you. It's inside of you and outside of you.
Well, and I think this is lost too, and a lot of people in AACA, NA, and all of those A's, is that I can't say for NA, but I can definitely say anybody who's Blue Book or AA friendly is this. It tells you that where to find God. And it told you in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that God is found inside of you. The reason why we say a creator or a God of your own understanding is because you and I will never, ever agree, just like a Muslim and a Catholic don't agree on the name of God even.
Yeah.
Okay? But you know what they can? They can always, 100% to the day they die, agree on is that both are perfect in their own way. We, as humans, are perfectly imperfect. We're never going to fire all of it perfectly like our creator can. And really, if you want to boil it down even more, go create your pretend friend, because that's what it boils down to. And if that's what gets you through, that's what's getting. I don't give a shit who it is that's successful in your life. I will guarantee you that they still are they're either agnostic because they're ignorant towards a spiritual understanding. They know that there's something there, but they're just ignorant to it. But the likelihood of them being an actual atheist is highly unlikely, because you have to learn how to be an atheist. When you're talking about a creator, this is a fundamental, primal need that you have in your life. Even those who say, I don't agree with the Catholic Church, or I don't agree with the Protestants, or I don't agree with the Muslims, that's fine. But the reality is there is some sort of spiritual being within you that you understand if you decide to put words. See, the word God can have many different or a wide variety of definitions. It's a plug-in for you. God equals these attributing factors of what God looks like to you. And maybe he is just caring, kind, and all these things. And he's not a vengeful God. I can tell you my God is a vengeful God because he's put me on my knees way more than once when I'm not listening to him, and that's why I need that connection. I agree with you that it is from within.
Yeah.
But what I also agree with is that he will do external things to show me why I need to be fostering a relationship with my internal. And in order to respect that, I have to humble myself in the morning. I have to work out to show myself that I can beat a challenge. I then can attribute that to my emotional well-being. Then I can be of service to other people. Without those things firing all in the same place, the calm, the four pillars, whatever you want to call it, my life is erratic. And then I will make really crazy, stupid decisions.
Have you ever read or heard any Neville Goddard?
No, I haven't.
Oh, he's pretty crazy. He was taught by a Somalian rabbi, the same guy that taught Dr. Joseph Murphy, who wrote the book The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And he had a cool analogy, and I'm not going to say it like sums up all of Christianity in it, but what he went through, he studied the Bible, and a lot of the places he went through, and he replaced the Father with the subconscious mind, and then the Son with the conscious mind. So when, like, for example, when it says the only way to the Father is through the Son, so the only way to your subconscious mind is through your conscious mind. So like that much makes sense if you look at it in that aspect. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of cool because like a lot of it was like, if you want to say you're an addict and you want to become sober, well, you have to like imagine yourself as sober enough that it becomes second nature, and you start making sober decisions, and you start abstaining, and you start staying away, and you start going to meetings, you start doing certain things that will get you to that sobriety. But at first, the first initial step is you got to think with your conscious mind of the ideal picture of where you want to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also agree with the attributing factor to that is you can no longer go along the line of addiction. Because and the reason why I say that is this. When we have a newbie coming in, and I'm working a big book study with them, and I'm going through a set of steps, first thing out of my mouth, Ken, is this: I just fucked up your using for life. And they look at me, and they don't quite get it. And the reason why that is because they're completely ignorant and naive to how much they've been hurting everybody around them. Because that's how selfish addiction is. We believe that we're only harming ourselves, and why should my mom really be crying her tears? I mean, I have come to the understanding that I'm going to die, and I'm okay with that. If you're not, well, that's too bad for you, right? That's where we are. But once you realize how much you taking care of yourself contributes to the world around you, just because of your attitude and the things that you carry, then you come to realize how integral you are into the fabric of society. And I think when addicts actually recognize that and understand that, then all of a sudden the whole world has a shift. They have that moral psychic change that we talk about, where they realize, fuck, I'm really not that selfish. But prior to that, a lot of us have to get to that place where death is prominent and it needs to be looked at in the face. I hate saying this. I mean, I've met far less guys, and the best example of this is this. I had a friend of mine in the fellowship where his bottom line was $1 million. Okay? That's where he decided to change his life. You know where my bottom line is? My bottom line was sitting in a fucking cell and lost my entire career. Okay? And turned bad in order to sustain my addiction. And being a high achiever that I am as an addict, I went as far as I could possibly go. Now, that being said, those two bottoms do not equate within their actions, but where they do equate is the main word that attributes to a feeling called hopelessness. Once you have utter hopelessness in your life, and you know that the way that you're living is a resolve to only negativity, then you can decide, yeah, I'm willing enough to change everything in order to have a change happen. Because we need to recognize that the positivity that we did have in our old way is tainted by the majority of the negativity. And once we can see that, then all of a sudden we can really make a huge change. But I agree with you. You do have to envision what sobriety is. It's overlooked. And I wish that detoxes would put that in there.
So let me interrupt you here. This was a huge tool that I used for my recovery. And I briefly explained it to the last discussion we had. It's called the Ideal Scene Exercise. And I read it in a book by Mark Allen. He's the guy that has the publishing company that publishes it's A New Earth, or no, it's called, what he published, Eckhart Tolle's books, A New Earth and Power of Now. I can't remember the name of the publishing company. But his exercise is called the Ideal Scene Exercise. And what you do is you envision, like, if everything goes best possible outcome, 5 years down the road, everything, house, wife, children, job, money, investments, relationships, self-worth, body image, money in the bank, like everything. If it all goes perfect for 5 years, where are you going to be and what does your life look like? And then once you can like sit down in like some sort of like calm meditative state and really devise this image or maybe a short movie reel in your head of what your life looks like in your house, in your car, and like everything down to the smallest details you can imagine. And then you write it down. And when you write it down in like a short story format, it is the first step to making an intangible thing tangible. Mm-hmm. So you take something that's just in the thought realm and you write it down on paper, and now you, out of that short story of your like ideal scene, you can almost pull out of it goals. Mm-hmm. You know, like, well, I want to have this job, I want to have this much money in the bank, I want to have this investment. And out of each of those goals, like once you write it down, you can start working on micro goals to obtain these certain things. But the first step is once you write it down. And what he said is that you don't even have to break it into these micro goals. All you got to do is read it once in a while, like mm-hmm. weekly or twice a week or something like that. And the more you read it, the more it gets impregnated in your subconscious mind. Once it's in your subconscious mind, it almost becomes a belief system that it's going to happen. Yeah. And once it's a belief, it's a fucking real thing. It's going to happen. So that's one thing that I did. And everything that I wrote down 2 years ago is coming to fruition now. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Earl Grey. I think his name is. I'm just going to pull it up right here because I don't want to quote it.
Earl Nightingale?
That's it.
Earl Nightingale. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
The Strangest Secret?
So this is one of the things that had happened with Earl
Nightingale.
That I had learned was he came out as a motivational speaker as a bet. It was a bet. There's a guy named Edward Bernays who is he's a propagandist from the Nazi Party, and he's the one who created public relations, and he's also the one who created the Lucky Sticks. Okay, so he's basically a guy who was an ad guy back in the 40s, but what he did was he was the first sociologist. He would market things, and his way of marketing through propagandizing everything mm-hmm. was 150% successful because he had things like freedom sticks for cigarettes, and they saw 150% sold. Okay, so this was the bet to Earl Nightingale was you could go out on the radio and as positive as your message is, tell people how to become successful in life, and we're still not going to breach that 10%. That was the bet between Edward Bernays and Earl Nightingale. Okay? So what did Earl Nightingale do? He started talking about how successful people become successful.
Yeah.
Guess what? That 10% still hasn't been breached. Because Edward Bernays wrote a book called Propaganda. And in that book, what he said is, I have altered nurture and nature time and time again.
Nurture and nature. Altered?
Nurture. He's altered it. So
Okay.
when I say the word, and this isn't the example. This is why the book was called Propaganda. When I say the word propaganda, there's a negative
connotation behind it
to it. Yeah. When I say public relations, that feels
Good.
a little bit kinder,
Yay.
right? But he made the definition on both of those words. See, the Nazi Party made propaganda bad. Public relations became good when things like Winston cigarettes had a public relations firm in front of them. Now, when you look at any political party, who runs the political party? A public relations firm.
Yeah.
Okay. Every government sector has a public relations firm that runs all of their media for them.
All their propaganda.
So when you look at it in that context, when Edward Bernays said that he just messed up or fucked up for life, nurture, and nature, because his question is this: how is it that the feeling was derived out of you that propaganda was bad? Was it because you had learned something? Because he said, I would suggest that it's not. You learned that propaganda was a negative feeling because you had learned this from the time in the womb. The way how the tone, when your mother had said something negative, just becomes negative across the board.
Yeah.
And so he said, by marketing and doing what I've been doing, people then are being subject to me manipulating the social structure back and forth to whoever the biggest bidder is. And his biggest one was birth control. He said in propaganda that birth control would totally kill reproduction within the Western world. Let's look at reproduction issues today. I mean, we're looking at the third or fourth generation of women who've been on birth control. We have so many birth deformities, way more today than we ever did before. And we also have many men and women who can't have children. And a lot of this is attributed to the high estrogen levels. Okay, that birth control basically pumps into women as well as higher testosterone levels in order to screw up the hormone for them not to have a healthy uterus in order to support a child. And this has been hit time and time again in women and also men because birth control ruptures DNA. That's what it's doing in the long term, right? It's tricking women in believing that they're already pregnant when they're not pregnant, and then all of a sudden they don't have pregnancy. Okay, that's what's happening again and again and again. So they miss their cycle. And Edward Bernays said they knew this from the beginning. They always knew that it was going to mess up the reproductive cycle of women. And here we are now sitting. And he wrote this book years and years ago, and now we're faced with the actual issue of what it is, and we're still not changing it. We believe that rhetoric. And I'm not saying that the Catholic faith is great. All I'm saying is this: the Pope had said over 3 pulpits saying birth control is bad. Don't do it. You shouldn't mess with the nature of your body. But out of pleasure, because that's what Edward Bernays harnessed for birth control, everybody went that way. And now we see low birth rates. We see serious issues in the Western world of birth control. If you look at anywhere else in the world, why their birth rates have sustained, it's because birth control is illegal in those places. They don't exist, or people can't afford to buy it. Yet our society hands it out like sugar. You know, that's just what we do, because that's economically correct, to be able to say when you should have a baby and when you shouldn't have a baby. That's what's motivating this entire agenda of marketing. It's all about money. And Edward Bernays wrote this years ago, and we still sit in the same problem today. It's crazy. It's crazy to believe that we're just like sheep.
Yeah. There's lots of propaganda going on about pharmaceutical industry. And like, I think you gave me some information the other day about fentanyl and opiate addiction here in Alberta, and like what they're doing, and like how like issues with Suboxone and methadone, and like, when are these people supposed to get sober if they're just providing? Like, I know this one girl, and she came off of opiates and they put her on methadone, and then they wanted to raise her methadone dose. Like, that's what the doctor said. we should up your dose of methadone. And she is trying to like straighten out her life, had to say, no, I don't want more methadone. I want to get sober. And he was shocked.
Well, we talked, when Chris was here yesterday, we spoke into great detail about that in the context that the Suboxone program literally has a succession plan of regression. Okay, we see that. The methadone program does not. And what I would suggest to any of the listeners is look up who the manufacturer is of Oxycontin, Suboxone, and methadone, and you may find a relationship between all three of those people. I'm not going to come out and finger it. I would suggest that people do their own research, because I don't want you just to listen to me as a one-stop shop. But I think that relationship between those three programs or three pharmaceuticals is very, very strange. And again, when we look at the marketing of Oxycontin, that was manufactured to doctors to truly believe that there was no addictive traits in Oxycontin. I mean,
we definitely know that's not true.
Well, because that's now attributed to the fentanyl crisis that we're in today. Right. And it's the revolving cycle. So how do we get back from fentanyl addiction into positive living? Well, really, the systemic problem is from childhood. And when we had Chris here yesterday, we talked about education to young people about how to learn what self-esteem is. We've been trying to do this with participation, fucking ribbons and all this stuff, and people not actually working and earning anything. And I'm a product of that generation. It did fuck all for me, because I still turned out an addict. Like, participation ribbons are not going to save the world growing up and not feeling shitty about themselves. The fact of the matter is there's no fucking value in a participation marker. Like, that ribbon doesn't mean shit to you. Everybody got the same fucking thing. There's a reason why we have a first, second, and third place. Work for it. What needs to be harnessed is how do we motivate young people to work for their own self-esteem? How do we get there? One way is martial arts, boxing, and all these things. Definitely that works. But that doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes it's art.
Self-esteem doesn't have to be worked for, depending on the person's perception.
That's true. That's true. But I think when we're...
We could just be innately good enough.
True. What I'm getting at is, how do we recognize that? So like, one of the things is that I'm getting at by work, if I could use that word, because I think that also has a negative touch to it too when we hear that word work, or earned, right? I think that also has sometimes a negative attachment to it, but it comes down to this.
We can build it.
When teachers are trying to teach children who have dyslexia, learning disabilities, and I'm one of those guys. So I was brought into a school for actually highly intelligent people, but have dyslexia. Okay. One of the things that they taught us, because they had to teach us how to teach ourselves, because the system just didn't have time for us. Yeah. Right. So one of the things that they taught us was this: challenge yourself in a way that you know you're going to win. So if you can read 20 pages today, try to read 20 and a half pages tomorrow as one way. So it's actually making you do something, or putting something in front of yourself that you know you can do now, but just a little bit more, right? And by doing that time and time again, whether it be you like painting, that's great. That's fantastic. So you did one painting today. Let's try to do 2 tomorrow. Or maybe let's do one and then start another one and see where that takes us. Because if we're producing that extra, then you go, fuck yeah, I got a little bit more today. You know, that's the feel good, right?
Yeah, accomplishment.
And that accomplishment, that's what I'm saying by work. You need to push that. You need to be able to push the envelope, because if we sit in status quo, no matter who you are, addict or normal person, status quo ain't gonna do you shit. You're gonna be some asshole stuck at the fucking postal service looking for a gun.
Yeah, no, a stagnant lifestyle in any aspect, whether it be like health, money, work, family, anything. If it's stagnant, it's dying.
Yeah. So we just hit an hour. Is that right? We just hit an hour? Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I thank you all for listening. We'll probably have Ken in again in the near future. And like I said, all those plugs, hit up iTunes, Spotify, Stitches, Google Play, YouTube. And if you can contribute to Patreon, please become a Patreon. Like I said, one-time commitment of $30 will get you a t-shirt, and a $5 commitment per week will get you early content.
And share it to anybody that you think might like
hit that
it.
Subscribe button, the
Share
whole bit. Yeah. So thank you again, and look forward to talking to you next week. Bye for now.